welcome back to the Build a Basement, and today we're going to fix the kinematics bed.
We're going to install the kinematics bed, but we're probably going to have to fix it eventually too. So, and once we do that, maybe Haley can help out, right?
Yeah.
All right. All right, so we lost Haley already. What are you gonna do? All right, so first things first, this kinematics mount. The instructions that came with it from Mandala, Mandala? It's not like Mandela, but anyways, Mandala Roseworks. They're there, but we'll just say they're not there. How about that? What I bought specifically is the kinematics kit, as well as the center brace that goes in the front here. Might be better off with a top overhead camera. Let's take a look here. Is this better? It should be better for a minute until we get close-ups. And a lot of the parts look the same, but there are differences in the parts. So I will say it first. First things first, when mounting this front brace, if you decide to buy this, if you don't, you can print one out of ABS. I'd probably suggest ASA. Probably the highest temperature plastic you have, just because it's going to be relatively close to the bed. And it's going to be under the bed, so it's kind of sandwiched in heat. So it will possibly warp over time, and if you're doing this is to kind of have a bed that doesn't warp, you know. So so what I did with this, the best way I was able to find to mount this, and I've already gone through this admittedly because it's not complicated, but it is complicated, and I've had a couple of people ask me specifically about measurements. So doing this live while measuring everything 14 times and remeasuring things 14 times would not be fun. So I have done it, so I don't want to come across as, wow, he figured that out quick. There was some figuring to be had. So, and there's a couple things that I'd like to point out too to anybody that purchases this kit, or even Mandala Roseworks. If you wind up watching this, or somebody winds up watching this that has anything to do with them, maybe just a couple little things that could possibly change for the better. Minor things, definitely minor things. Machining on this equipment is awesome. The bed's awesome. We'll get into that too. We got to put the little mounts, one of the mounts on there. I put the other two on there to save time. But back to the center brace right here. So what I did is I had my my roll-in nuts, my T-nuts that rolled in. And there's always a long side and a short side to your T-nuts. The holes offset, just so depending on how you're installing them, you have the ability to get something closer to the edge of something, or even sometimes use those as spacings. And that is exactly what I did. And pardon me if my voice is a little hoarse, I'm getting over something. So that's exactly what I did. I basically used those nuts, those roll nuts, to space my front mount, which is a tip. It's not in the instructions, it's my tip. So if you use a long section of those nuts and you put those in and you pull, you don't have to pull them right away, but once you attach everything loosely, you pull them all the way forward, that's gonna put your center brace right about where you want it to be. If you're building a 300, maybe a 350, don't know for sure, and you're using a stealth burner, because a stealth burner does push, or actually, I will say this, a stealth burner with a tap, because that does push out your tool head a little bit further towards the front. If you are not doing that, you could subtract the difference between the tap and the standard tool head attachment to the X rail and push it back by that distance. It's probably not enough to make a difference here. You could probably work it both ways, but this right here is where it kind of needs to be based on what I'm measuring and what I'm seeing. So I'm gonna go ahead and tighten up these remaining two screws, which aren't the easiest to get to because of the way the brace is kind of together. It's straight out and it has this bump out, which is for design. I imagine it might have something to do a little bit with you know, how well it holds up, but get in there with a ball end and just get it finger tightened, and then get in there with the other side and give it some gusto. So we're gonna do that and do this side as well. So unlike when you're following the directions, and if you are not putting a mount on this and you're watching this video anyways, if you look at the directions, you're going to find, and if you didn't, please go back and look. It's in maybe page 50 something, 58, 56, I don't know, 59, one of those numbers. If you attach the bed directly to your frame, it's not going to be tight. You're not going to tighten those screws down. You're going to tighten down one of the screws that are holding it down. If I recall correctly, you're only going to use 3 screws, and one is going to be tight, and the other 2 are going to be finger tightened. The third one's going to be left completely out, and that's basically so your bed can contract and expand depending on what temperature it's at. So back to what we're doing here, and actually, since we mentioned that, kind of a mention as to why we'd go with this type of mount. This mount basically is known also as a floating mount. It's stationary in the fact that it holds it where it needs to be, using magnets and concave depressions, but at the same time, as metal expands and contracts, it allows for some of that movement. Much in the same way on our Z-joints here, how we had a little bit of a bend. Can't really see them on the ones I'm looking at, but this one, one of these. Anyways, yeah, on these guys, all 4. There's a little bit of a surface on there that allows it to ride around a little bit. And that's just because sometimes having something completely rigid is not what you want. A lot of times it is, but sometimes it's not. So that's mounted in the front. That's where I got that to go. That's where I feel it belongs. Next step I took was to get yourself a good square, not a contractor cheap square, but a good decent square. And you want to mark a center line. Your center line is going to be across the center of your screw. And then get what you believe is a good center line on one side. Do yourself a favor, measure that same center line on the other side, and make sure that they are true to each other. If they are not true to each other, your square is probably not being true to you. Dating tips here for you and your squares. While I'm saying that, while I'm talking about measuring things with squares, this is a message to Mandala Roseworks. And it's not huge. Again, I'm not dragging anybody out or anything like that, but this is a rear mount. This is the other rear mount. This one has rollers on it. This one does not. This is a concave magnet. Convex, concave, convex over, concave under. These are not the same width. And let me actually switch camera real quick here. These are not the same width. So this one that has the rollers on it is not as thick depth-wise as the other 2 mounts that are on here. So that means when you're squaring things up, again, not nitpicking, just pointing it out here. When you're squaring things up, it makes it difficult to use something like a square or something like that to ensure that your parts are in the same location. It doesn't kill you. You can still figure it out, and it's there, but it would be yet another way to kind of ensure that you have things where you want them to be. Unfortunately, you can't do that based on the current design here. If this had another 1.5 millimeters, 2 millimeters of aluminum on the edges, which I don't know why it couldn't. It's the only reason why I mention this, because I think it's doable. Not a problem. On this roller piece, on the back side here, whoop, hard to have cameras here into a printer. Let me see if I can get focus a little bit better. There we go. On this piece, there are 2 square nuts that you need to put on here to attach to this, because this will either get attached one way or the other depending on the printer you're putting it on. That's understandable. These screws that come with the kit are just barely long enough to catch the first couple threads, even though they are threaded pretty deeply. They don't go all the way through, but they're pretty deep. And I actually over tightened one of them by mistake, my fault completely. But I was able to replace it with another M3 screw. It does not embed into the aluminum like the other one did, but actually it might have if I didn't put that on backwards. Nah, nonetheless. Yeah, so be careful with that because you're working with a steel screw into aluminum. And I'm gonna see if I can, actually I'm not, I'm gonna leave it, I know it works. But you're gonna wanna put those on anyways, and they're gonna go on this direction like this, okay? Another thing you wanna make sure is when you do attach these, is that you have enough room in between them for your T-nut that's going to eventually wind up in there. Let's look at that real quick. So this T-nut right here is going to actually wind up, these are gonna basically shoulder each side of those. And if they can't, you're never gonna get it to go down all the way, okay? Yeah, cool. So just quickly, one last mount to put on the bed here, and let me see if I can resituate this camera just a little bit so I can kind of put it in the frame while I'm doing this, and then grab this and focus it out. There we go. All right, so I've already attached most of these already. This one right here is not. I believe it's this one. I hope it's this one, or else I'm going to be detaching one that's already on there. If I can find the right tools for the trade here. Yes, that's the right guy. I'm gonna throw a little bit of thread locker on this. These do not have studs on them. They are hollow, so you're able to screw through, which is good because it's gonna be hard to get anything in there to do your tightening. So they enabled you to basically use a normal screw to do that. I'm gonna put a little thread locker on this guy. Like I said, thread lurker. If you got thread lurker, you can use that too. All right, and then just gonna tighten that down. And finger tighten that with my finger holding the back of that. It's going to basically hold it, and then just out of the force of the screw applying towards the plate, you should be good. It will hold it in place. Going relatively tight with that. These shouldn't move. Once these are on, these should be good to go. Let's set that back aside. Go back to this. So we got our front brace on. We've got all of our 3 mounts on that. There are 2 in the rear, 1 in the front, match the printer. And let's go over these parts real quick. So on the front part, you have a 12 millimeter high. I believe it's 12 millimeters. Let's double check. I know folks love to correct folks on YouTube. 12.01. Call it 12. We'll say they're more precise than I am. Now there are 2 nubbins on the bottom of this thing. Those nubbins go into these recessed nubbins. Is that a word? We'll make it a word. So those are gonna go into there. There's a little bit of play there, but we're gonna pretty much go center with it. Before we do that, I'm gonna use a little thread locker on that. Don't need a ton. Just a little bit for fun. Throw it in, like so. These parts look awesome, by the way. These are really well machined parts. So I'm just gonna try to eyeball center that. This particular mount on the front is the most floaty of the floating mounts. So you do have some room for play here, because pretty much this whole surface is going to be your play space. So on top of this guy, there's going to be a flat magnet. This is a high-powered neodymium magnet. I don't know if it's a 5 or whatever those numbers are, but goes in like that. It should be basically flush with the top of the aluminum portion there. There is a tiny bit of play there. Not a big deal. That's fine. You do have these cover plates that you put on. Okay, these cover plates, they could go on like that, but you would not have a chamfered edge. They have a chamfered edge here. That chamfered edge should be facing upwards. If for some reason, which if you get that far out of whack, you've got mad skills for getting stuff out of whack. But you should be near the center. Damn near. I can't talk today. I'll tell you what. Damn near the center of that, and but having that chamfered edge in there is how it's supposed to go. So again, I'm going to put a little thread locker on these guys, and these screws are pretty small, so I'm going to put that on my driver first. I'm just going to give it a little bit of a scrape, and then we're going to put this in. And that is not tight at all right now. If you can look, it's still wiggy and jiggy. There. Ooh, it's a good magnet, huh? Look at that. Probably. See, every once in a while I gotta do something for me. Come on. All right, we need a bigger. There we go. Look at that. Good magnet. All right, that's 2. People get so upset when you take 30 seconds and do something like that. That's why it's fun to do that. And number 3. And Das for the German viewers. Number 3. I don't know how to say number in German, sorry. All right, so now I'm gonna go through, I'm gonna retighten these. I'm just gonna crisscross. I don't think you need to, but sometimes habits are good to form, right? All right, so that's that guy. That's where he goes. We got our center mark on there, everything. And I did make a center mark there on a pencil, just so you know. Later on, we're gonna use that to measure a little bit, just to ensure that we have things where we want them. Now, I'm not saying you won't have to do any fine tuning by any stretch of the imagination, but again, these are numbers I've got. When we get done with this, I believe the bed is going to be about 32 millimeters from the front of the frame. So, okay, next one up, let's do the one that's damn near the same as that one. I believe this one was 15 millimeters. Let's double check that. 15.01. Again, they're probably more accurate than I am, so let's take the screw out of that. Let's grab the driver. Put a bit of the thread locker on that. And again, this says nubbins. Nubbins this time go into the rail. Them's rail nubbins. And working blind, but it's okay. All right, I'm gonna leave that one really loose for now, okay? And the cool thing about that one is the concave magnet that comes with this has a hole in the middle. So you can actually just throw that in there now for S&Gs. And we can also put on our retainer. And so we're gonna put that like that because we can get to that, that center screw on this one. So that's good fun on that. That's some good thinking. Widens our availability to make modifications. And that actuality of all this, this one is the only mount point which you can adjust without disassembling things. So you may want to keep that in mind. And so one thing I didn't mention here, so hopefully you're not following along exactly at the same speed as I am, but the screws I'm using thus far, excuse me, thus far are roughly, what are these, 5 millimeters long. The 2 screws that are going into that final mount are a little bit longer. They're probably about 8. So we got that, we got that, we've got that, and that one. Okay, so this one's still moving for us, which is fine. We're good. It's all good. All right. So now we have our last one. This is the one with the rollers on it. And we're going to put a little bit of the good stuff on that. And again, we're going to be basically straddling the T-nut with this one. And we're going to just get it close to where we want it, leave it loose. And this one we cannot put, we cannot put those parts on just yet. Those are the 2 screws we're going to want to use them for that. And just so I don't forget, let's put this up here because, yeah. So I'm going to have to stand up here to see the rest of it. So you guys are going to be looking at this awesome KB3D logo, which, by the way, is where I got this kit from, as well as the bed. Chris over there is awesome. I have not had any issues whatsoever with Chris. He's probably hating on me a little bit for some things that I mentioned. I don't know. Hopefully people watching this have during the stream have patroned Chris a little bit here and there. I think he'd appreciate that. So I'm looking at 280 millimeters from the edge of this, And mind you, my ruler does not go all the way to the edge, so I need to bypass. I need to go to the first line, and then I come all the way to here where I have a mark, and I'm at 280. So this is where I want this right now. So I'm gonna hold this down, and it's going to move. I'll put my screwdriver in there, and I'm going to realign it because it moved on me. And I want it to be 280. Dang it, going to make it 280. So 280, 280. Give that a good tighten. There we go. Not moving. It's thread lockered in. So on this side, and I'll show you something real quick. Back to my little micro complaint. It would be nice if them strong magnets. All right. It would be nice if one could come here and basically do something as silly as this and just line these two up and be assured of them being in the right location. But in actuality, I don't know how well it's showing up on camera, but this is going to be set back a little bit. And if I bring this and drag this, not a lot of room. If I take this and I drag this forward, I'm also going to hit this again before I hit this. So it is centered in the sense that they're centered to each other, but it would be nice if they were the same size. I don't know if it's an extra 20 cents or $2 per part. I would pay the extra $2 personally if it was $2. So our difference here is about 1 millimeter. So we're looking at about 280, just slightly more than that. It's kind of hard when you're splitting half of the millimeters. So let's get that where we want it. And again, the difficult part about all this is there are certain assumptions. Assumption one is that your frame is exactly as square as my frame, which my frame is exactly as square as I was able to make it. Does that mean it's perfectly square? No. But no line is exactly straight. Square is never exactly square. And flat is only as flat needs to be. So all those things in mind, we do the best we can, right? So now that we have that there, let's get that magnet in there, and these guys, there is a bevel on this, so it's almost got like a crown top on it. We want that crown that goes towards the top, the rounded edges, and that magnet is going to affix itself to this, and we're gonna have to kind of deal with that, but we'll get to it in a second. And the reason why that happens is most of the parts are aluminum, with the exception of those rollers. Not completely just the rollers, but those rollers are they need to be as hard as the balls on the bed. If they're not, then you're going to get wear marks quickly. And if you get wear marks quickly, you're going to wind up with grooves eventually. And if you get grooves, then this no longer works the way it's supposed to work. It's easier to float on water than it is to float on ice. Now, it sounds funny, but you don't float on ice. Ice is a solid surface, which means there's more friction. It's not as fluid. Get it? All right, so thread lock on those. Those are on. Those are good. I'm gonna go back around one last time here. I'm going to move Mr. Stealth Burner back to that corner. I'm gonna get my arms in here. And I'm doing that with the understanding that my stepper motors are not connected to any drivers at this point, because they will backfeed electricity if you do that with them installed electronically to a board. So keep that in mind. Little tips, right? All right, so there we have our 3-point kinematic mount. Everything is tight in place to where it needs to be tight, but loose where it will be loose, because it's going to be loose. All right, so come back to our bed. I like to call this guy right said bed. I'm gonna flip my wire around for now. We did that in a previous video, by the way. If you've never done that, that's putting that down. Make sure you get your heater as close as possibly. The all, 99% of the heater adhesive should be touching the bed and the heater. So I'm gonna put this in the back, like so. Slap it on the front, and we're gonna take some front measurements to see how we did. Because I can tell you right now, looking at the front, it looks like it's cook-eyed a little bit. So, best way I've found to do this is get yourself a good straight edge. Don't use the rule like this. No bueno. Don't do that. Actually, let me switch cameras here again. Let's see. Let's move this guy over here. And let's go there. And let's do that. Good. Yeah. Again, good straight, not good. Don't do this. Do this. I know you wouldn't do that, but if I don't say something, somebody will say something. But do comment, okay? Not that I don't want comments, but I don't want to be the on the wrong end of a comment. How about that? So I'm gonna bring that up. I'm gonna eye it to the very edge of my ruler. I'm at, hold on. Whoop. You gotta be exactly 90, well, you wanna try to be 90 degrees above this. So I'm at 32.55. I'm gonna tighten that up right there. And I'm guessing I am not straight here on the front. I am not. I'm probably off by about a 0.5 millimeter. So, I have options. My option is to leave it like that because it's a 0.5 millimeter, and dang it, that's probably good enough. Option 2, which is what I'm going to go with, is I'm going to push this back. I'm going to attempt to push this back a 0.5 millimeter. I'm probably going to fail. Well, I'll let you know right now. I'm probably going to fail doing that. I can actually see that 0.5 millimeter. That might have moved a little bit when I was tightening things up. But yeah, I'm probably going to fail in getting this back a 0.5 millimeter. But we're going to try anyways, right? And of course, the reason why I was able to see it is I was seeing where my front post was, and basically due to the fact that we're multiplying the difference between the offsets, I was able to see that this was shifted much more than it really was in real world use. But yeah, so I'm going to try to loosen that up. I want it relatively loose because if it's not, it's going to jerk. And then I'm going to take my ruler. I'm going to set it right where I want it. And then I am going to push this all back. Too much. About there. I'll hold it. And it's twisting a little bit, so we'll see what that puts us. Not bad. Retighten this up. And maybe there's a better way to do this, but I haven't seen it. I actually have not seen a video of somebody installing this bed completely. So hopefully I give some views, right? Huh? That, along with you commenting and giving this video a thumbs up, will ensure people see this video. And maybe help me out a little bit, right? We'll see. All right, tighten, tighten, tighten. Good. All right, let's put that bed back on again. And boom, boom. Still looks a little offset to me, but let's measure it. We're at 32.55. Now that probably should change to about a 32 on the money, because whenever you change something on one edge, it should change the other. I'm gonna go to the far edge here, and I am slightly unscrew that. I'm going to see if I can use my 3 hands I don't have, and get this right where I want it. Okay, so I'm roughly 32.3 to the front. On this side, I'm almost back to where I was originally. I will say, let's actually measure it just so you guys know what I'm working with here. I am 31.83. So about a half millimeter, a little bit less. I'm gonna call that good for now. All right. I think it's gonna need some tweaking eventually anyways, but we'll get that tweaking in a bit. So next thing I want to talk about real quick, and I put out a little short video on this, and I'm gonna move my little helper camera right here, my little desk cam. See if I can get the focus where I want the focus before I bring it on. And let's go here. So I built this Purge bucket. Whoa, kinematics, baby. And basically Wago connection point. This is a Rama design. I'll try to leave the link to this in the description of this video. But it's all held together with the magnets, and that's just freaking cool. So you have 2 magnets up here on each side to hold the primary cover. You have 2 magnets on each side down here to hold a wire cover. So basically once your wire's in there, it holds the cover onto that. This guy is going to mount, it might be easier if I take that out first. You have to put some T-nuts in, I'm gonna have to screw that in, but basically it locks right in like that. You're gonna be able to get your wiring from back here. You're gonna pull that just about 1 millimeter or 2 from where your chain will be, okay? It screws in from the sides. You have your cover, goes on like that. And then you have your complete cover that goes on like that. And it pretty much locks everything into place, okay? And then you have your Purge bucket. And you know what I'm gonna have to do? I'm gonna have to fold these wires where they're more apt to be in the end here. There we go. Get your Purge bucket that goes in like so. Yeah, just like that. So that puts me, you know, right up against the bed within a half a millimeter, we'll say, which is pretty much where I want to be. Printed this off with ASA. So as opposed to having that printed with ABS, again, it's another part that's pretty close to the bed. I printed it with ASA just so it has a little bit more resistance of the heat. Being so close to the bed, take this off. But it's a very nice setup. It's not a hard print. I'll try to leave a link down below, like I said. But you want to clean out your Purge bucket, it's magnetic, comes right out, put it back in. You can take your bed off because this is a kinematics mount. I still have access to my hole because this has a little bevel here to go down there. So my bed stuff's gonna go in here. My wiring is gonna come up here. I'm gonna use the Wagos here. I'm gonna have my primary, or actually my neutral for my bed, my primary lead, and then my thermistor, and then my out to my bed. So that will be that, and then my ground to ground my bed, and then two connections for my not thermistor, my thermal fuse. My thermistor is going to go to the last two of those. So that gives me all my connections for my bed. It gives me my brush. It gives me my kinematics mount. And all in all, that gives you another video, and hopefully you enjoyed it. So again, I don't want to beg, plead, anything like that, but if you like this video, if you like the series, if you like any of the things I'm doing, go ahead and leave me a thumbs up, leave a comment. I appreciate both of those. I try to answer every single comment if it's a question, even if it's not a question. If it's a keep moving full speed ahead, I like those too, you know? If you have questions about this mount, if you have questions about this bed, oh, I didn't talk about this bed. Hold on, reverse. This bed, let's get to this camera. Let's talk about this bed real quick. Hopefully you stayed. That's why you stay through whole videos, by the way. Watch the whole thing. Excuse me. This bed, you might be asking yourself, why does it look so strange? So you can have the flattest bed in the world. I mean, you can have it milled down to the billionth of an inch, or mil, or whatever you want to measure with. I mean, it could be glass, mirror, perfect flat surface, and then throw a sheet magnet on it. If you find a sheet magnet that is perfectly flat, you're good. But there is no perfectly flat sheet magnet. It doesn't exist. Unless you find a liquid magnet that you can pour on this bed and make sure it dries completely flat, it ain't happening. So this bed, excuse me, apologize. This bed has neodymium magnets actually inserted in the bed. They are slightly below the bed surface, but ever so slightly. This bed itself is milled down to quite the degree. So we're going to be able to maintain the complete flatness of this bed throughout. I mean, we're not dealing with a magnet on top of it and then a build place surface. Only thing we're dealing with is bed, build surface. Build surface, be right back. You can still hear me, but you can't see me. Magic like that. I worked with some folks down south. And at Fabrico, they make a series of black PEI bed plates. They have it in both textured and flat. But it's, I'm gonna go out on a limb and seem like a weirdo, but you know, I'm making YouTube videos about 3D printers, so join the club, right? But it's sexy. I mean, this black, man, I need a drink. This black, when compared against a yellow bed plate with the PEI or anything else, very nice. So now we talked about that, and now that you stuck around and you watched the whole video, give me a thumbs up, give me a like, give me all that stuff. Subscribe if you haven't. You know, write me a song, send me some lyrics, send me a good message, do whatever you want to do. But do check out my next video, and I will see you soon.